Hi, I'm Audrey.
She's Audrey. I'm Scott.
We live on the coast of the Alaska wilderness, and
It's kind of obvious, right? We're sitting on the beach. It's
we're
a beautiful snowy day, and we wanted to sit somewhere interesting, so here we are.
somewhere different, watching the snowfall on the ocean accumulating into a layer on top of the water. It's very interesting. Anyway, we want to talk today. Well, I want to talk today to Scott about non-dualism and feelings, emotions, the experiences that occur. Scott,
Do you have a question?
how does non-duality relate to the human experience of having emotions?
Well, I think that I was contemplating, I actually got this question in advance. So I knew she wanted to talk about this. So I was thinking about it this morning, and I did have what I think is a pretty good analogy for it. The the mind and the body, the physical body, the mind being like your thoughts and ideas, and then I would call it your emotional body, which is your feelings and maybe less conscious experiences that you identify with. So we call them emotions, and I think that's a good word for it. But I think there's other sort of variances on emotions too. You could saw like sort of instinct or whatever kind of experiences. But um, it's my belief that there is only awareness, and that's all that we are is awareness, the observer. And feelings are something that you observe. They come and they go, right?
Mhm.
It's obvious through experience if you watch a feeling of sadness comes, that's how you know it arrived and you're feeling sad, and then it goes. And the coming and the going is how you actually know its existence. And the same with happiness or whatever the feeling, excited, depressed, whatever emotion, feeling, experience you have, it always comes and goes. So that's one way to know if something is yourself or not, is if it shows up, it's not you, because you are there to see its arrival. And it's kind of a simple thing, and it's actually a little frustratingly simple, but that's how you can define where your sense of identity is at. Is it only makes sense that whatever you are never goes away. You need a ground for experience, a baseline. And that through ignorance and lack of inquiry into our experience, we very easily identify with, I'm hungry. And that's a form of language, but it is, in fact, more than just the words, there is an identification with the experience and the feeling. And so it's the same with the other emotions. We tend to say, I'm sad. And we think we are the sadness. But when you pause and look at it, it's kind of obvious that you're not the sadness. You're observing the sadness and you're identifying with it. And it makes sense to say, I am it at that point. But it's due to lack of um, contemplation or clear minded inquiry into it. So, emotions are things that come and go, they are not what you are. And they're not bad or good. They tend to come with a message. And if you're lost in them, it's hard to hear or see or receive the message because you're identifying with them. It's a lot easier to receive a message from something or someone when you don't believe you are the message. It's kind of silly, but I'm not sure how to explain that. And so I think that emotions They are part of experience, neither bad nor good, right or wrong. They're no more real than any other experience in life or less real. They are just a part of experiencing human life. They are observed from a place of the witness, and they carry a message with them. Um, the message is really dependent on the emotion and your context, obviously, but it's like if you touch a hot stove, you obviously, your body receives a message. This is hot, pull away. Well, emotions are often in that way too. They're telling you this feels good, this doesn't feel good. They usually would indicate if you're consistently feeling sadness or depression, loneliness, or purposelessness, or something like that. Whatever you got going on in your life, you're getting the message this is not working out for you in some way. Um, if you're feeling peace, joy, happiness, lightheartedness, excitement, message things are working out, right? It's like something is going on that is good. It's working for you. And so that's how they're messengers. And I think that in a progress of, or on a path of non dual awakening or approaching inhabiting the awareness or the observer state, it's typical that people, myself included, have the experience of struggling to learn to detach from identifying with the emotions. It's very easy to identify with them.
Mm-hmm.
It's a habit and pattern that is so ingrained that you don't really ever think, I will identify with this.
Mm-hmm.
It just happens. And it happens instantaneously without your awareness of it until you start to have awareness of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get to decide. For a little while, you get to decide, oh, am I going to lay claim and inhabit this emotion, or am I going to observe it's coming and it's going? Listen to its message. So there's my really long-winded way to get around to my analogy, which was um, your mind and your emotional body, they tend to distract from your awareness. It's very easy to get drawn into the story, the thoughts, the feelings, whatever it is that's going on is very compelling. And the emotions can be very powerful and very, I would say, seductive. They're very enthralling. And my analogy is this: imagine that as simple awareness or as an observer, you are observing your life play out in front of you. And it's not only the weather, but it's also your internal experience, your thoughts, and your emotions as well. And if you want to live a happy, peaceful life, it behooves you to establish your sense of identity in the place of the witness or the observer in awareness. It's hard to do when you're enthralled with your emotions. So my experience in many has been that it's the exercises to develop the ability to not lose yourself, sense of self into those experiences. So imagine that your life is like a TV and it's playing a story, which is your life story. And your emotions are being portrayed in the story. Your character, Audrey, is having feelings and thoughts and experiences, and it's exciting. And the volume is up pretty loud on the TV. And imagine you're sitting in a living room and there's a large screen TV and it's playing and it's very loud. And you might be able to turn away from it and not lose yourself into it for a moment and inhabit your space of awareness. But then it's still there. It's still going. Like the volume is still up. And I think that we've all experienced some level of this where you just can't turn away. You just cannot break your attention away from the story. And I think this is where practice comes in and time, or for some people, some sort of phenomenal experience happens. But imagine it like turning down the volume to where you're able to turn away for a little while
Mhm.
and find some peace. You can still look back and see the story playing, but with the volume turned down, it just isn't so overbearing and you're not so compelled to lose yourself into it.
Mhm.
You can always go back and turn it up if you want, but if you're able to tune it down, turn it down, maybe turn it off, it doesn't make it go away. The story is still playing out, but you're able to find some sort of space or calmness or peace. There's a little bird over there. Without being constantly completely lost into the storyline. Be careful if you ask any more questions because that was a hell of an answer.
Well, I laugh at some, like while you're sharing, I laugh because I've been in the experience of like having that intense feeling come over me. And maybe it's fear, maybe it's anger, maybe it's sadness, and feeling it in my body and like feeling it so intensely
Mm-hmm.
that to not identify with it is like it's it feels nearly impossible at the time because the physical body that I'm exhibiting feels hijacked.
Yeah.
And that's where, for me anyway, when things that I'm speaking of, I would call them trauma responses or triggers. And not
Mm-hmm.
everybody experiences that level of intensity. Like, not
Mm-hmm.
everybody has that experience, I suppose. But something that I have observed is that although it's difficult to maintain awareness in those moments,
Mm-hmm.
in general, practicing awareness when things are a lot less intense, when the subtle feelings may, pop up throughout the daily life or the experience or whatever,
Yeah.
to really practice during that time of
Yeah.
getting curious around those feelings and checking in and then having the conversations with you, having the conversations or doing the reading or the reflecting or whatever
Mm-hmm.
helps ground me in that time, like practicing that when there isn't a 911 emergency.
Yeah.
And then that way when there is, it's there's always that thought when it comes in, it's like, this will pass. This is coming in.
Yeah.
This is going to pass.
Yeah.
This is not forever. You do not have to identify with it.
Yeah.
And I will say that the most pain that I've ever experienced in my life has been in the identification of those things,
For sure.
you know.
That's where the suffering is.
Yeah. And that has lasted years in certain parts of my life. Because as humans, I feel like it's really common that we make stories. Our ego mind wants to make a story, wants to explain that things are the way that they are because X, Y, and Z. And a lot of times, like, call them storylines, maybe they're the archetypes, like,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is, there's some sort of an ingraining pattern that we identify with or that we like make real or use as an excuse or have that pattern that feels familiar and breaking out of those patterns when those emotions come for me also is just an opportunity to like be aware of. And then one of the questions I've been asking myself a lot lately is, what story is that supporting? What story is that feeling supporting? Like, where does that come from? Is that
Yeah.
a victim sense, anyway, but
Yeah.
all of it is just having awareness, not attaching to it.
Yeah. What that is a similar questions like what am I getting out of this?
What am I getting out of this?
And it's usually embarrassing because when you ask that question you
Yeah.
find like, oh, my victim story makes me feel special or justified or something and it's like, ooh, it's kind of sick. But
Yeah, that's gross. I'm not judging the victim story. And I know I've participated at times, but
yeah,
I'm
it
not,
just, yeah, I'm
yeah,
not meaning that story specifically, but
sure.
most of them, if they're a negative story
Yeah,
and we're repeating them to ourselves, we
yeah,
have a reason.
right.
We probably just haven't really taken the time to identify it. And when you come face to face with it, it's like, oh,
Yeah. Well, and then it's like for me, there's been a lot of those experiences where I'm like, well, that no longer serves you. Like, good job. That helped you survive those years of your life. Thank you for showing up. Like, we can move forward now without that. So, and I don't know. I speak of all of this, it's awareness that you need to inhabit in order to have those experiences, but that's awareness as like an action instead of awareness as a being.
What is the action?
Um, Having awareness, yeah, being the action, being aware.
Oh, what are you saying though? Being
Isn't that action different? Like I think of awareness throughout the day. I think, okay, I'm aware of this. I'm kind of deep. I like to dive deep within each thought or each situation that comes up. And having awareness in those experiences, is that different than the essence of being awareness?
oh, not. I don't think so. I mean, I
Okay.
think it's the same thing.
Okay.
Um, Awareness is feels like an action when you aren't usually inhabiting it. It feels like you go somewhere, like, oh, I'm going to go into my state of awareness. But the reality is, you're always in awareness.
Right.
You might be aware of being lost in your ego or in a story, but awareness is always there.
Right.
And this is the funny thing about this kind of enlightenment or awakening. It doesn't add anything. You don't go and get it. It's always been there.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing to add. It's just letting things dissipate. I wouldn't even say it's taking away. I think
Mm-hmm.
that this analogy of a fire is a good one because probably everybody's familiar with the idea of like what did you say it often? What you put your attention on grows.
Yeah, where you focus your attention, energy, it expands.
So that's been my observation in life for sure. And if you focus your attention on your story of being mistreated or whatever it might
Mm-hmm.
be, then you attract or amplify that experience.
Mm-hmm.
The law of attraction and all that stuff explains this really well, and I think it is applicable. But so the way I think of it is whatever it is that you might be desiring to eliminate in your life. Do you have an example of anything you don't want to continue in your life?
Right now. Um, sure. I guess I have like this repeated pattern.
We're getting into it now.
This repeated pattern where um I I co-parent my two children with my ex-husband. It's been a lot of years, 8 years of doing that. Most of the years we're together in the same city. And I chose to move out of that city that I felt very out of alignment in and was personally having some serious struggles. I chose to move out of that city a couple of years ago now, just about. And there's anytime my kids, specifically my daughter, misses me, or there's some sort of a mom lack, or maybe my ex is having a bad day and makes some sort of a passive comment towards me and about my move or something. Anytime like those things come up, I go back through this repeated pattern of like, I have to accept that it's okay to take care of yourself. It's okay that you moved. You're not a bad mom. Like, you're still very present. I have to go through like this whole cycle.
Yeah.
And it's less and less and less. Like, it used to bring me to my knees. And I used to think that it was not something I could survive. And then, for example, last fall, I was aware of this, but instead of sitting in it, I got on the boat, hired a water taxi, got on the boat, got in the car, and drove the 4 or 5 hours to go be, which is appropriate sometimes. But I acted last fall tremendously out of kind of like angst and a sense of lack and fear. And then this spring had the opportunity to do that or to sit in the discomfort, but also expand beyond because I'm aware of when I'm chasing those feelings of fear or not enough or to fill somebody else's bucket, that those are out of alignment with my true nature and pulls me even farther away from that. And then no matter what, if you're pulled away from your true nature, you're going to have to come back to center. And anyway, so do I have an experience of observing a pattern replay that I would rather not? Yes, I do. And I feel like it's in the works of dissolving,
Yeah.
but it's still there.
I'm just realizing your hair is probably rubbing your mic.
Mm.
I'm not sure where your mic is, but your hair is moving.
Okay.
Um, so it's kind of a tricky one because you're basically playing out an unconscious belief, it seems like to me. Your unconscious belief is that you may have made a bad decision or should be doing or have done something different.
Mm-hmm.
You're not actively feeding that story, but it is being sustained. And
Mm-hmm.
so this is like, I wanted to share an analogy again. This is not the most obvious version or situation because it's kind of multi-layered what you're dealing with there. But the same thing still applies. This idea of what you put your attention on grows, and
Yeah.
you can apply it here. Like obviously, if you sit around and think about how you should have done something different or
Mm-hmm.
should be doing something different, that experience will intensify with your attention.
Right.
So there's, I guess, first I would just share something that has been a part of my journey is that we have a lot of unconscious beliefs that are running our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of growing in awareness is
Mm-hmm.
loosening your grip,
Right.
which usually results from facing your fears to where you feel like you can relax. You
Mm-hmm.
feel enough. You start to develop trust in God or whatever it may be taking care of you that you can start to let go of the grip a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start to do that, you start to see what those unconscious beliefs are that are feeding the stories that you are hearing recirculate in your mind over and
Mm-hmm.
over. So it's a little bit like that TV analogy. If the volume is up really high and you're sitting there trying to meditate, it just doesn't work. Like
Right.
you have to figure out what you need to do to calm things down to where you might be able to one day turn the volume off.
Mm-hmm.
And it's relative to if the TV is blaring loud, if you turn it down a little bit, that feels good.
Mm-hmm.
You turn it down a little bit more, that feels good.
Mm-hmm.
And you incrementally get yourself out of these intense feedback loops where your either conscious or unconscious beliefs are screaming at you
Mm-hmm.
and you're running around either running from a fear or towards a desire
Mm-hmm.
and you don't really even have a chance to identify your a witness or observer state in it because you're just so busy you're like overwhelmed by the volume of the TV.
Mm-hmm.
And I've experienced this a lot myself, in fact, where I have read a lot of books about non-duality and awareness, and I got all the intellectual knowledge I would need for 100 lifetimes, but still have lived in the experience of not being able to turn away from the the show. Just
Mm-hmm.
it's like I'm absorbed into it, and I know that I am awareness, and I can stare it in the face and think, I'm awareness. This is not me. And as soon as I relax that focus, I'm sucked back into it. And that went on for, I can remember one period not that long ago for kind of months where it's like I really had to just focus so hard to not be lost into the storyline. Not experiencing it now, thankfully, but I know that feeling. So, anyhow, this thing I wanted to share is imagine anything in your life that you are either wanting to expand or contract is like a fire. It's a little campfire, and you put wood on it with your attention. If you give it attention, it's like putting another stick or a log on the fire,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to burn for a while. If you focus on whatever it might be, a victim story or resentment or anything like that, it's like putting wood on the fire.
Mm-hmm.
And you may then turn away and go, oh, like, I'm not doing that anymore. But the fire is still burning, and it takes it a while for it to dissipate down, to run its course, and then maybe that fire will die. And you don't have to kill it. This is the
Mhm.
thing about these emotions or stories or beliefs. It's not an act of eliminating them, it's an act of stopping feeding them.
Right.
You don't have to go around your life and slay the dragons.
Right.
You just have
Ooh. Okay. Slay the dragon.
you just have to quit putting wood in the fire, and they will dissipate. The entire experience of being human and lost in illusion and losing your sense of your true self, it's not a place that you went and you have to journey back from.
Right.
You just have to quit going there constantly.
Right.
You're always there in your core state of awareness. It's just a matter of stopping the patterns and tendencies
Mhm.
of your mind, your emotions, your identifications, and you don't have to do anything. You just have to quit doing some things if you want to inhabit a place of peace.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And then comes like, oh, sometimes you wake up and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm really not living in alignment with my values. Or I've been at this job for 10 years that's sucking my soul. What am I doing?
You've been ignoring
Or,
messages for a long time.
or yeah. Or, oh my gosh, like, I think this is gaslighting. I'm so confused. You wake up and you're like, what? Like, then what? Then no action needs to be taken. Sometimes when you do wake up, it's like,
Well, so the thoughts and the feelings create their own inspiration and energy.
mm-hmm,
If you have a job that you hate,
mm-hmm,
the hate for your job is your energy to quit it.
mm-hmm.
That's the fuel
Right,
that's required to make a
right.
change.
Yeah, we were talking about that the other day. It's moving
And
the energy.
if you are open to observe and you're not lost in your story or attachment, you will start to receive the messages that life is giving you,
Mm-hmm.
and
It's so true.
it's you don't have to generate the power to act
Mm-hmm.
on them. In fact, you won't act on them. They will
Exactly.
play out themselves. It's like the things sit on the
Yep.
floor and don't do anything, and then
Mm-hmm.
something happens to you, and you next thing you know, you end up you're cooking dinner or something, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh shoot, I failed my mission to do nothing. But it's that way too. Just taking the job one for example.
Yeah.
Um, if you quit blocking the message of I hate my job, why do I hate my job?
Mm-hmm.
And it may not be your job at all. It may be
Right.
the
That's just an
belief you have.
example.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's just like things are not always direct too. It's like the hate my job may be a cover story for
Mm-hmm.
unhappy in my relationship
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
it's really hard to peel these things back and let them dissipate
Mm-hmm.
when you don't take the time and the presence to shine the light of your awareness and attention on them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I'd say, the story of Western society is everybody's running around.
Mm-hmm.
They almost never sit still. They're
Yeah.
afraid of themselves. They're
Yeah.
afraid of silence and solitude. They're afraid to come face to face
Mm-hmm.
with what is actually running their life. And they, it's snow falling. And they have never really given themselves the time to even ask the question, who am I and what am I?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, it can be terrifying to slow down when you're avoiding your truth and your own awareness through actions. I would just say
yeah.
I was in that situation for a long time, and honestly, when I first moved to Homer, when we started visiting, coming over to the cabin, and not even just living here, but just visiting, that stillness, like I'd get here, and for some reason, I would just start like sobbing and just have like some real intense, like can't even stand up, you know, type of emotions. And it's the experience of disassociating with truth so consistently in the culture that we're conditioned to do that. Like you're not winning or achieving unless you're pedaling in many regards. And
Mm.
that type of pedaling is
Disconnects you.
the complete, it's like a crude formula for disconnecting you not only to your truth and your essence, but to, your soul, to God consciousness, to the entire purpose and truth of our being. And it takes a lot of courage to, and it's amazing to receive support in this courageous exploration that maybe you're on too if you're watching this video. It takes a lot of courage to really look at those things because with when you slow down, what you find and what you uncover, maybe you'll be discarding some of it. Maybe some of it will be
Yeah.
staying.
Yeah. My experience is if you quit holding on tight, life will take away what's not supposed to be there.
Exactly.
And the question is, will you be able to let it go?
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I've had that analogy for myself so many times. Like I would just say when my marriage like finally ended, it wasn't because it had been, going well for years. I was just holding on so tightly. Like, gotta make it work. Gotta make it work. Like, whatever I can do, gotta make it work. Can't split the family. And then, I had some health things that I needed to address that year that we ended up getting separated. And so, in that year of focusing on myself and my own truth and the things I needed to do, let go of that rope so tight. There it goes.
Yeah.
Thank God.
My experience has been sometimes God, if you want to talk this way, sometimes God has to rip something out of your hands so that he can give you something better.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you have been going through your life feeling like whatever is good you've had to earn
Mm-hmm.
or deserve somehow, and not believing in abundance and the possibility of undeserved joy or whatever, it's hard to accept it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's crazy, but it's can be hard to accept blessings.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I observe quite a few people that don't. That opportunity is knocking on their door and they're hiding in their room with their head under
Mm-hmm.
their pillow. Uh, and usually there's a story involved, like, oh, I don't deserve it, or it's, somehow I'm not worthy, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it might be. But
Yeah. It's true though. I remember you pointing that out early on when I was first getting to know you. It's just, you know, not used to uh, feeling supported and and loved and some sense of like security and partnership. That's new for you. It's uncomfortable. And it's scary, honestly. Like if you're not used to.
waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Yeah. And honestly, even though it's been a while now, I feel like I've just evolved out of that stage into a new stage of awareness around that, and it's a while, so it's interesting.
Yeah. I think the fire thing is really resonating for me lately, thinking about that. It's just um, an evolutionary life involves fueling fewer and fewer fires.
Yes.
Just simplifying, not having so many fires burning. You don't have to put them out.
Right.
You just have to quit fueling them.
Right.
Most all of our problems are sustained through our own efforts.
Yeah, it's true. And oh my gosh, so much effort. And that's something else that can happen, right? Is if let's say that you even experience the awareness and you have it, but maybe within you there's like a need for whatever reason. Maybe there's we have this achievement type of culture and society. Maybe there's a need for conflict, maybe there's a need for excitement, maybe there's a need to validate those feelings of self-worth. Maybe there's a need to make your ego really big and, talk a lot about yourself. Like, I don't know. We all have these weird little internal, well, we don't all, but we've as humans, we've been conditioned. And it's interesting to observe those, and even in awareness. Like, I have observed certain patterns in myself in awareness and be like, well, that's happening. I'm going to let it keep happening for right now. Like,
Mhm.
interesting. I'm okay with this level of discomfort. And then it's
Yeah.
like, oh, your discomfort is now bleeding onto other people's experience and people that you care about. Well, that's the time to rein that in, for me. Like, oh no, like, I can repair myself. I can recover myself. I have that awareness. I can come back to wholeness and purity. But you can cause damage and harm to other people in your life that can be irreparable through your own actions and words. And that's really inspiring and motivating for me because for whatever reason in this human experience, I observed that. I think I mentioned this the other day, but connection and community and love and bonding and all of that is like, those are like my things. I love them. So I'm very aware that if it's an experience that is like high value, I don't want to show up in those storylines in my life that can cause pain or discomfort for others. But as humans, sometimes it happens.
Well, you don't have to identify with it.
Exactly.
You don't have to be a human.
Yeah. Okay. So talk me off the sledge of identifying and being human. Just so you know, real quick, it smells really good right now. It smells like salty seaweed, fresh snow, kind of like ozone-y. Smells like salty ozone.
That makes sense, given the environment.
It's really delicious.
I love how the snow is falling out of the trees. It's snowing and snowing snowballs at the same time.
Yeah, like really adding up on the trees. So instead of watching the birds and listening to the eagles today, we're watching snow blobs randomly fall out of the snowy trees.
I think that one of the most powerful lessons that I've learned in practicing awareness is that um, nothing survives in the light of awareness. And
Right,
awareness is not doing anything,
right.
it's just allowing and observing and staying there with it, whatever it
Mm.
is. Not
Allowing and observing.
not running from it and not fighting it.
Exactly.
So they're saying what you resist persists.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's true. Whatever it's like this,
Mm-hmm.
it's
It's
putting wood
so
on the
true.
fire. If you fight against it, it
Mm-hmm.
grows. If you give your attention to it, it grows.
Mm-hmm.
Unless that attention is in a pure awareness state
Mm-hmm.
where you're not fueling it, you're just observing it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the difference is a state of detachment with
Right.
whatever it is that you're observing.
Right.
It's like it's easy for us to do this with nature. Uh, the tide comes in, it goes out.
Mm-hmm.
It's a snowy day, it's a rainy day, it's a
Mm-hmm.
sunny day. Those things just come and they happen, and we don't. I would say we don't, but a lot of people still get upset when the weather changes. It's a lot easier to not get upset about the weather changing.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a lot more diligence or insight to not get upset about yourself getting upset. If you observe your story, your mind, your feelings getting upset, and you're on a path of awakening out of your identification with your mind and body entirely, it's hard to not have some self judgment or frustration with those things. But one thing that's helped me is just to start to look at my internal experience like I look at my external experience. And there's a lot of analogies for this. Like imagine that you are the blue sky, and thoughts and feelings are clouds. They come and they go. They don't affect the sky. The sky is never tainted or touched by a cloud. The clouds come and go. And it's pretty easy to comprehend that. You look up at the sky, it's cloudy today. But can you apply that same sort of non-attached acceptance to your internal experience? What if your feeling of sadness is a cloud?
Mhm.
What if your feeling of frustration? What if, like, here's a master level trick. What if your feeling of self-judgment
Mhm.
is a cloud? Can you just observe it? Go, oh, wow, look, there's me judging me.
Mhm.
Okay, let it be.
Yeah.
Just let it be.
Right. Let it be. Well, and then it's funny, right? So I was
Well, let me finish.
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
S-
I'm just thinking I just
The
relate to so much of what you're saying.
the thing about that is the message in there is that when you show up in that non-attached observer state, nothing survives.
Right.
Like you can't be angry if you're not attached to the story of being
Mhm.
angry. You you will think the thoughts will come like, why bother?
Mhm.
What's the point of being angry? Like I'm not even buying this story. It's like the salesman knocking on your door, like, hey, anger's on sale. You want a bunch? And you just think, no, actually, like, not interested. Okay.
Yeah.
It just goes away. And if it doesn't, it doesn't matter. Like,
Right.
this is the thing about awareness. You may still have the experience of anger, or you may not. But when you finally show up in pure awareness around it, you don't care whether you have it or not.
Mhm.
And in almost every instance, you won't.
Mhm.
Because not only does the roller coaster ride start to smooth out in more awareness, but it also gets better.
Mhm.
It's not just less highs and less lows. The average raises up,
Mhm.
and the lows sort of start to disappear, and you just don't
Mhm.
have patience or time for them. It's like anger shows up, and it's like you're not really welcome here. Like nobody is buying your product,
Mhm.
so sit on the couch if you want, but like nobody's gonna sit down and talk to you,
Mhm.
and then it just leaves. It's like, well, there's
Mhm.
nothing to do here. Not, hate doesn't have a place here anymore.
Mhm.
Uh, Discomfort, nah, whatever. Resentment, it's, it's no fuel on those fires.
Yeah.
Oh, you probably forgot what you're gonna say now.
No, it's okay. I was just thinking it's like if you have an experience that feels hard or crazy, I don't know. I was a nurse in the community for many, many, many years, and there's all these crazy things that happen, like that you want to call your friend or your partner and be like, not believe that. And you want to talk about it and you want to share it and whatever because it's like that level of crazy. But I would just say that in my last probably maybe I would say the last few years when I was really just like kind of waking up to the experience of awareness, I I realized and recognized that each time I would open my mouth and I would choose before, am I going to share a story? I'm going to share this story because what am I doing when I'm sharing this story?
Mm-hmm.
Bringing life into it. I'm giving it life.
Mm.
I'm making it alive. I'm reliving those feelings. I'm reliving the discomfort that I had in that situation.
Yeah,
But what
putting a
happens?
log on the fire.
Yeah, but what happens if I don't even acknowledge like it wasn't like I needed to go to counseling or whatever over these, things. It was okay if I just let them go, right? It's just kind of like just part of the nature of being in the field. Got to let a lot of stuff go. But
That's the power of discernment that comes through awareness
mm,
that enables things to just dissipate and
right.
dissolve.
Mhm.
There you often see in the spiritual writings, like, oh, it's like ice dissolving into water. That's what a
Mhm.
lot of the things in life end up being. Is
Right.
one day you look back at your journal and you realize what an angry, hateful, depressed person you were, and maybe you're not that way anymore. And it's just because you like stopped playing in it. You
Mhm.
stopped jumping in
Right.
the mud. You
Exactly.
didn't throw the mud. You didn't fight in the mud. You just
Mhm.
were like, oh, I'm just not doing it. I saw the message. I heard the message.
Mhm.
It doesn't feel good to be resentful.
Mhm.
Why would you be resentful?
Mhm.
Well, if you're lost in the story and you think I am resentful and you don't know where the motivation came from, it's really hard to get out of it. When the TV is up super loud, it's really hard not to get sucked into it.
Hmm.
But through practice, you can start to pull your attention away from those things and put it towards the one worthy goal in life, which is just realizing who you are, which is pure awareness, in my
Hmm.
opinion.
Hmm.
And these things that were raging fires, one day you look around and it's like they're just not even there. They're just smoldering little
Right.
coals, and nothing has happened. You don't have to do anything. You
Yeah.
just have to quit doing.
And that's what I was thinking is when we let go, tighten the grip, quit doing, quit fanning the flames,
Loosen the grip, you mean?
loosen the grip. Yeah, what did I say? Tighten the grip?
Yeah.
Whoops, do not tighten the grip. Loosen the grip. When all those things, and you do all those things, then a lot of times naturally, so much in our experience of life falls away.
Yeah,
And
just of its own accord.
yeah, and observing and allowing that is part of the journey. And
Be patient with yourself.
right.
It can be hard. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, you can't ignore the TV when it's in Technicolor and super loud.
Right.
Just start reining back in your attention, or stop intentionally giving it, and
Right.
it will slowly, maybe fast. Some people have like, you know, big experiences that totally transform their life. That has not been my journey at all.
This has been mine over and over and over again, but yeah, I've had multiple life transformations. But anyway,
Mine's been slow and steady over what shockingly is decades at this point. But I look back at my journals and it's like, oh wow. Sometimes I can go years kind of thinking the same basic thoughts. Um, but well,
that's okay.
my opinion on it is that it's not something that we do. Grace or God or universal consciousness is all that there is, and it's drawing itself back home, so to speak.
Exactly.
And the pace at which that happens is it's not my business.
Right.
Um, so I just am there to observe the process, and
Yeah. Yeah. Walking each other home. Rumbles like that.
that never resonated for me, but whatever.
I know. That resonated for me because there were so many different teachers in my life, so many different people that I learned about myself through those experiences. And then they have shared that they learned about themselves through their experiences with me. So it's like, to me, that means that we're sharing an awakening, sharing an awareness, sharing in experiences of awareness,
Mhm.
and home being the self awareness, God. Yeah, it's I related to that for many years of my life.
I related to awakening is the most lonely experience ever.
Yeah.
Because for me, it felt like um, not only losing the significance or the story that I was telling myself about my relationships, but also losing myself. And it's awakening to oneness involves losing the entire delusion of others and recognizing that there isn't others. And that also included what felt like the story, Jesus' thing about being born again, really, at one point, really rang true to me, because I realized that in order to progress on this path, I had to shed the whole identity that I had lived in for my adult life, basically, since I was a kid. That I'd been telling myself, whatever I was in my career at the time, or family at the time, or whatever, that has to go, and it feels like dying. It
Mm.
feels like a death,
Yeah.
and it feels like a suicide, because you are able to look at, for a period of time, to look at the idea of ending that delusion, ending feeding that story, whatever you might think you're a carpenter or whatever. And if you are on a path of awareness, you'll come to a time where you have to let go of that.
Mm-hmm.
You have to stop holding on to that identity, and it feels like death, and it feels really lonely.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And you can still chop wood and carry water after you have your awareness and
you can't actually, because you recognize it's just happening.
right.
You're not doing it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the loss of the doer,
Mm-hmm.
which is, it's like taking your hands off the wheel and recognizing that, God's driving or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
but you really think you were driving.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes a lot of motivation, I would say, to consider that level of letting go or surrender. And suffering is generally the most powerful motivator.
Yep.
Oh, I was somehow fortunate to not have very intense suffering, but I had more existential like angst and just discomfort or discontentedness with what was,
Mm-hmm.
and realizing that no matter how good life looked or was by any measure, it was never going to satisfy the aching and the yearning I had for something more.
Mm-hmm.
And that was sort of a slow, agonizing process of realizing that there was never going to be satisfaction on that journey.
Mm-hmm.
And so came to the point where it wasn't worth, there was no motivation to even stay on the journey.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
So then what happened?
It's slow. Like my experience has been slow, so slow it's imperceptible. But if I look back, I remember moments in life just feeling that for a while I just couldn't not think, I'm sick of being a human,
Mm-hmm.
which is weird and very unrelatable to everybody I
I
knew at the time.
felt that so much. Yeah.
But what it meant to me was really, I'm sick of identifying as a human and thinking that's all that I am and all
Exactly.
that there is.
Yep.
So it feels like dying before you die, which
Right.
in some spiritual texts they say like that is awakening or enlightenment
Mm-hmm.
is to die while you're still in your body. I don't, has that happened to me? I didn't have some flash of light and an awakening, but I would say, evolved to a point where I live in much more peace and harmony than I used to. And it's of great part due to not identifying or attaching to normal human experiences that I was before. So it's like an ice cube dissolving. You can't really see it happening, but if you look away and look back, it looks like it's
Mm-hmm.
smaller
Mm-hmm.
and it feels different. It feels smaller in your hand. That's how my journey has been, is just very slow.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like I'm putting warm water in the bath with the ice cube. I read the spiritual books I like,
Mm-hmm.
contemplation, time in nature, um, doing things that support that dissolving and not doing things that take away from it.
Right.
Just a very, very slow, steady journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I talk like mine has been wham bam, thank you, ma'am, here and there, everywhere, it's really big and profound. But I guess, I don't know, maybe you can relate to this, but I've had like, I'd say probably a dozen, maybe half a dozen monumental moments over the last decade that it's like I woke up in those moments and I was able to see and experience things clearly, not being overwhelmed or intoxicated by fear.
Mm.
And those moments of clarity, but you cannot unsee that, and you can forget it doesn't exist for a little while, but when you wake up to your true nature, it's impossible to turn that off.
Yeah. My experience has been that you can sure ignore it for a while, like 10 years.
Yeah.
I had this crazy thing in my life where I was at a state of spiritual evolution, I'll say. And then I literally took a 10-year detour and I happened to come across my journal. I've told Audrey about this. I happened to come across my journal from 10 years prior, and I realized I was almost in the exact same spot, except now I had a family and a bunch of property and like all kinds of human responsibilities and stuff in life, but I was feeling the exact same way. And it was honestly incredibly gutting to realize that I was essentially emotionally, physically, not physically, emotionally and spiritually, I guess I'd say, in the same exact spot.
Mhm.
10 years. And the message I got out of that was, it's kind of funny. I just couldn't help but think, like, this is the way it is for God or the universe. It's like, oh, whatever, a lifetime, a decade is like a snowflake. It's like, whatever, 10-year little detour, like, no problem, no big deal. Oh, it's nothing. Doesn't matter. And my little sense of self was, oh, I cannot believe this. The pain of um, spinning my wheels, getting distracted for that long. I don't know. I'm kind of over it now. I don't suffer those feelings or attachments right now, but it was very shocking. And I don't know why I'm talking about that, but
Yeah.
I guess I would just say, like, if you're like me and your path feels very slow, I get it.
Yeah.
It's felt slow for me too,
Mhm.
but it's not without progress, and it's not my responsibility anyhow. And
Yeah.
just keep showing up in awareness or trying not to chase down the delusion.
Yeah. A big part of tracing down the delusion is thinking that you have control over other people or other people's actions or anything like that. And just thinking about the real surrender and peace that comes in realizing and recognizing that, nobody else is responsible for your feelings. Like we're responsible for our own experiences, truly. And it's like just having that awareness right there can really cause some issues if you're in certain types of relationships, but can also cause a lot of freedom. And can, like, if you have an experience, okay, this is what happened to me. One of my experiences. My dad was like my best friend, talked to him multiple times a day. He fed the story for me. I was in my mid 30s when he died.
There's a mouse running by
Oh
over
my
there.
gosh. Oh yeah, mouse.
I haven't seen a
Weird.
mouse in a long time.
Yeah, that's weird. Um Anyway, he was like feeding that storyline. Like I'd call him in my anxiety, I'd call him in my fear, I'd call him to celebrate. Like he was just my person, just there, kind of gave me that validation and that confidence that like, you got this, girl. I was in my mid 30s probably when he died. But after, I mean, he died suddenly and we were really close, like beyond just the reasons of me leaning on him. Like we were super close. And um after he died, like immediately it was this elevated new sense of awareness of like, okay, are you going to live in this victim state that like your life, I mean, my life could have been over at that time. And in many ways it was. The life that I knew was over at that time when I got news of his passing. And but what it did was it just opened up a completely new ability to expand in awareness and to not attach to those victim stories. And if you've ever experienced loss or shock or trauma, then maybe you can relate as well that it kind of can crack open and give you like a sense of clarity that wasn't, you were too afraid or you weren't able to experience prior. It's like the worst case scenario happens in my brain. I couldn't even imagine what my life would be like if that happened. I couldn't even go there. And maybe you're feeling that way about a marriage or a job or, something like maybe your kid's going off to college. I don't know. there's just different areas in our life that we cannot even imagine that we would be able to make it through that situation. And then those can be the catalyst to your awakening. And those can be the catalyst to your freedom. And I'd say that I've had that experience multiple times in my life where the things that bring you to your knees are the things that wake you up. And they can wake you up or they can set you into such a cycle of fear. I've had both of those. I've gone down both of those paths. Uh,
Exploring every option.
yeah, I've explored every option. This is the better one. This is way healthier. It's way more enjoyable too. Just like Scott was saying, I really appreciated that analogy is when you live and bathe in the reality that we are pure awareness, then the lows, the low bar, it gets a little higher and gets a little higher. And even the things, that would crush me a year before, they're not crushing me today. The awareness, the experiences, they change.
Mhm.
And I'm just thinking about emotions since that's kind of what started this talk. Is when we experience or when I experience, um, a heightened state of emotion, um, it's having the awareness that and the acceptance that that's okay, and having the curiosity that, to tap in and to dive in and learn a little bit more if that's your style and if that's what you want to do, totally not necessary. But I loved what you were saying about it's just when we give it attention, it stays. When we fight it, it stays. When we fan it, it stays. And
And sometimes it stays for a while, even if you feel like you're not doing either.
it's true. It can
It's because
last
you put wood on the fire
for
and it's
weeks.
going to burn out.
Yeah.
But if you can stop putting wood on the fire, it will burn out.
Yeah. Yeah. It was another pretty gutting experience when I realized this is another weird awakening that I had that I'm not sure why I'm sharing right now, but um maybe halfway into my I don't even know how long. 14 years together, 10, I don't know. Halfway between in the middle of my relationship with my ex-husband, there was just this significant disconnect and lots of pain. And I remember just having just like this huge emotional meltdown by myself, sobbing, and just really realizing, coming to the realization that we come into this world alone. Like, yeah, we're born to another human, but we come into this world alone and we depart this world alone, like as far as this little human body experience. And for me, having that awareness at that time, I was able to let go and detach from the emotional entanglement of it being somebody else's responsibility to help you through your suffering. And although that was not waking up to the fact that I was pure awareness, like it was probably honestly, one of the first glimpses into it that I got was just identifying with the fact that it is not, I mean, we're not separate, but also your experience is different than mine. And I'm kind of rambling, just thinking of the different levels of waking up to things in life.
Yeah, definitely is levels.
Yeah.
I think that a good example of that is you were saying how, we can choose different or whatever. Well, I agree with that. You can make choices, act differently, but you actually can't
Right.
make choices to act differently because you don't exist in this sense of people ask, like, oh, is there free will or is there not free will? Well, there's not free will because you don't exist, so you can't have free will.
Mhm.
Um, at a certain stage, it's back to that TV analogy or whatever. If you've got the TV up super loud, like you
Yeah.
just can't. You just can't. You have to work at where you're at, and it's not you working, but at different stages. If God consciousness has put itself into a storyline and believing it's separate, it's going to work itself out incrementally or through some grand event. and every little sliver of consciousness is at its own place. And the law of attraction is a good example.
Mm-hmm.
The law of attraction makes perfect sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what you put your attention on grows. You
Mm-hmm.
have to feel it before it's manifest. And this
Mm-hmm.
idea of like, reality follows energy, and
Mm-hmm.
manifest reality follows energetic reality. So if you want to have a new car, feel like you have a new car.
Right.
It sounds
Act
silly,
as if.
and it's all this like separation, doership stuff, but it also, I've observed the pattern, it works.
It does work. It's so interesting.
So at a certain stage of life, that's appropriate, where
Mm-hmm.
you feel like you have to make choices to do things differently.
Mm-hmm.
And then at a certain stage, you might look back and realize, oh, funny, look at the way consciousness or God acted in that state. I believed that I was doing things differently, or I was using the power of the law of attraction or something, but you may come to realize that, oh, actually, that was just happening and I was observing it. I just was identifying with it at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And so these patterns of, I would say there's natural laws in our shared reality where certain patterns are predictable. If
Mm-hmm.
you feel happy, good, and abundant, you'll probably have a pretty good, pretty abundant life.
Mm-hmm.
Are you doing that? I would say no. But when you're lost in that story, absolutely you're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's better than focusing on misery and
Yeah.
suffering and lack.
Yeah, it's true.
It's all a spectrum, and there's no doers on the spectrum, but there is stages where you're identified with the doer and it
Mm-hmm.
feels that way. And like, by all means, do what feels right. Listen to the messages, take the positive action,
Right.
and then one day you might realize you never did anything.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
There's one pure desire and there's one pure motivator in life, and that is the movement towards awareness.
Right.
And if you believe you need to do it, do it.
Yeah.
And then someday you might realize it did it itself.
Yeah. And it was part of your path to awakening, or just part of the expression of consciousness. So,
Yeah, I look back at all the time I have spent reading books and making myself, meditate or whatever it could have been at the time. And some of those things felt hard and I was pushing. And now I look back and it's just very obvious looking back. It's like consciousness was drawing
yeah.
or pulling. There's a little mouse. Might get to see him in the video there.
That's funny. Mouse, spirit, medicine. What does it mean?
Spirit animal, the mouse.
The sign of spring and rejuvenation. And
I'm starting to get cold,
me
even though
too.
I have a lot more clothes on than Audrey. But so for my part, I want to wrap this up. And what I would do, if you've watched this video to this point, obviously you're really interested in this subject matter, and I would encourage you to leave us a comment or watch some of the other videos. In some way, it's obvious you're being drawn to this message, whatever you're getting out of this, wherever you're at in your life. And we're just sitting out here in the wilderness, sharing our story and living our story out. And if you have something that is burning on your mind, or you haven't found the answers to anywhere else, and you feel like we might be able to help, leave a comment. And it's highly likely it could inspire us on our next little talk. So feel free to engage. We're a lot more accessible through the internet than we are in physical reality. And we look forward to hearing your experience. This spiritual journey has been the number one priority of my life for a very long time, even though I have gone on lots of distractions and lost focus many times. I've read a lot of books and digested a lot of information about it, and it's super easy for me to see everybody else's problems.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to spend
Especially
my time
mine.
doing that. No, but it can be helpful. I mean, the I have a lot of intellectual knowledge to draw on in this
It's true.
subject matter.
I find it very supportive and very guiding. And honestly, if I can just share one thing with you before we get out of here, because yeah, my toes are numb.
It's as cold as it looks.
I just I just want to say that way to be here if this is something that you're interested in, and way to seek and just tap in, having support in your life, whether it's a partner, a friend, a online community, whatever it is in my experience, it's just essential, and it's such a gift that consciousness is sharing with all of us in the collective right now. So thank you for joining. Thank you for subscribing and staying tuned for what comes next in our Many Streams, One Ocean series. Thank you for being here.
Go forth and follow what draws you in. What resonates with you, in my experience, has been the only true guide in life. So
It's true.
I had a lot of different teachers, a lot of different
Mm-hmm.
strange podcasts and
Yeah, me too.
eccentric books and things that were the right place and time for me. Hopefully, these talks will be the right place and time for somebody.
Yeah.
And if so, I encourage you to dig in and take what it offers you, and good luck on your path.
Yeah. Thank you. Take care.
I think I can turn it off like this.